Radha Hare Bhakti-Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta-Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Rasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyamakun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Navadip Dham ki jai, Mathura Dham ki jai, Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Tulasi Devi ki jai, Yamuna Mai ki jai, Ganga Mai ki jai, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Jai, Maharaj ki Jai, Shri Gopal ki Jai, Hare. I'm literally breathing that mantra. Oh yeah, that's like the first one. Yeah.
Jai Shri Krishna Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Govinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Continuing our study of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 15, the Yoga of the Supreme Person, Purushottam Yoga. It's 10 through 20. Complete the chapter. So we can chant together, starting with text 10 of chapter 15, Sanskrit. Utkanandam sthitam bhati Gunjanam vagunamritam Vimudhananu Pashyanti Jnana Chakshushaha. Translation: the foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of one's nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. Text 11. Yatanto yoginas chainang pasyantyatmanyavastitam yatanto pyakritatmano nainang pasyantyachetasaha. The endeavoring transcendentalist, who is situated in self-realization, can see all this clearly. But those who are not situated in self-realization cannot see what is taking place, though they may try to. Text 12. Yada adityagatang tejo jagad bhasayate kilang yat chandramasi yat chagno tat tejo vidhimamakam. Translation. The splendor of the sun, which dissipates the darkness of this whole world, comes from me, and the splendor of the moon and the splendor of fire are also from me. Text 13. Gama vishyacha bhutani dharayamyaham ojasa pushnami choshadhi sarva somo bhutva rasatmakaha. Translation. I enter into each planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit. I become the moon, and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables. Text 14. Ahang Vaishvanaro Bhutva Praninam Deham Ashitaha Pranapana Samayukta Pachamyanam Chaturvidham. I am the fire of digestion in every living body, and I am the air of life, outgoing and incoming, by which I digest the 4 kinds of foodstuff. Text 15. Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto matta smritir jnanam apohanam cha vedaischa sarver aham eva vedyo vedanta krit vedavid eva chaham. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas am I to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. Text number 16. Dvavimo purusho loke ksharascha evacha kshara sarvani bhutani kutasto kshara uchyate. There are 2 classes of beings, the fallible and the infallible. In the material world, every entity is fallible, and in the spiritual world, every entity is called infallible. Text 17. Uttama purushastvanya paramatmetyudahritaha yoloka trayamavishya vibhartyavyaya ishvara. Besides these 2, there is the greatest living personality, the Lord Himself, who has entered into these worlds and is maintaining them. 18. Yasmat ksharamati toham aksharadapichottamaha atosmi loke vedecha pratitav purushottamaha. Because I am transcendental, beyond both the fallible and the infallible, because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as that Supreme Person. Text 19. Yomam evam asammudho janati purushottamam sasarvavit bhajati mam sarvabhavena bharata. Whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead without doubting is to be understood as the knower of everything, and he therefore engages himself in full devotional service, O son of Bharata. Text 20. Iti guhyatamang shastram idam muktam maya nagha etad buddha buddhiman syat krita krityascha bharata. Translation. This is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures, O sinless one, and it is disclosed now by me. Whoever understands this will become wise, and his endeavors will know perfection. Back to text number 10. Utkramantam stitang vapi bhunjanam vagunanvitam. Vimudha nanupashyanti pashyanti jnana chakshushaha. The foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. Yat kripatamahang vande Shri Guru Dinataranam. So, utkramantam stitham vapi bhunjanam va gunanvitam. Krishna is instructing Arjuna, he's elaborating on something he mentioned earlier in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. He introduced the transcendental science of the self, and he spoke about, in a kind of indirect way, well, direct but negative way, he defined what is the soul as distinct from the body. And here he's elaborating about the process of transmigration. So he said earlier, Dehinos minyata dehe, komaram yovanam jara, that the soul is passing in the body. As the body goes through different phases, stages, incarnations, even within one life, with the temperament and physical nature of a child to that of a young person, to a middle-aged person, to an old person. Life is changing. So in the same way I existed in the past, although I don't even recollect much of what I was doing or what I was thinking. So in that I'm still existing. So in the same way, as time goes by, my existence will continue. I used to, wonder about this when I learned in school about this law of thermodynamics, which is that the conservation of energy. The matter is never created or destroyed. We've all heard that. So I asked my mother one night, I said, I learned this in school, Mom, that so everything is being constantly recycled throughout the universe and given fresh energy and life vitality as it's reappearing in a different form of life. Oh, what's the engine behind all this? And what happens to the higher energy that's controlling the material energy that surrounds the body, the conscious energy? That conscious energy is clearly of a higher order. So if matter is never destroyed, we must assume that conscious energy, that life source, can never be destroyed. If it's superior, it must be superior in all respects. So what's going on there? Can you explain it? And she looked at me, and she knew I was a lost cause at that point. She said, "Oh no, you're a philosopher. You're not going to do anything in life. Oh my God." So she used to tell me, she said, "As long as you don't come for me for money later, that's okay. Just don't come asking for money later." Okay, so just as a side note, somebody once came to Plato and asked, should I get married? I'm not sure about it. Your philosophy is very deep and intriguing, and it seems like you have the truth. So what do you think? Should I get married? And Plato said, yes, you should get married, because if it works out, you're going to be having happy life. But if it doesn't work out, you'll become a philosopher. So, I don't know if it's true. I heard it. I can't remember where I heard it. Yeah. So, Krishna is elaborating here about the transmigration of the soul. And it's fascinating, Well, let's read the purport here. Actually, we didn't read the purport. Let's get into that. Srila Prabhupada's purport to text 10. The word jnana chakshushaha is very significant. Without knowledge, one cannot understand how a living entity takes his present body, nor what form of a body he's going to take in the next life, nor even why he is living in a particular type of body. This requires a great amount of knowledge understood from Bhagavad Gita and similar literatures heard from a bona fide spiritual master. So Prabhupada's highlighting here that this is not a cheap realization. It may be just the beginning, but it's really not something very easily attained. Therefore he says, this requires a great amount of knowledge, understood from Bhagavad Gita and similar literatures, heard from a bona fide spiritual master. One who is trained to perceive all these things is fortunate. Why was Prabhupada emphasizing that one who is trained to perceive this process. He's fortunate. Why is he so fortunate? Rishi Kumar has something to add, yes? Yeah, I'm asking, or answer. Yeah, you can give an answer. Sure, after him. No, Rishi Kumar, you were first, and then he can...
The wording changed a little bit after I raised my hand.
Oh, really? What was it?
The first time you're saying, why did Prabhupada say he's fortunate?
Okay, you can answer that.
Okay, I was thinking because that was like the point that he doesn't get this knowledge just out of his grand strength or his own big endeavor, but by his good fortune, he's getting this knowledge from the causeless mercy of Krishna and the spiritual master.
Right.
I don't know if that was in line with where you're going.
Okay, so in other words, you're saying this is not a type of knowledge that you get just by your own. Anyone, it's not like a human endeavor. By your own merit, yeah. So it requires good fortune. That's a good point. Thank you. Turn. Okay. Yes, please.
I also see it as like a little bit of being chosen, or the door is open, because the fortunate one is seeing or apprehending these lessons, or seeing the reality for what it is, almost as if he or she has been selected to see.
Wow.
And so, Krishna, in the way that he works, is like, he's like, yes, you're fortunate because you're eating the breadcrumbs. You're coming to see me. You're coming to me.
Oh, good.
And I think anyone is fortunate on that path.
Very nice. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Fortune is required. What is that verse from who knows that verse from the Chaitanya Charitamrita that speaks about the necessity of fortune in spiritual life? You know it, I think. Maybe you don't know how I'm alluding to it. E brahmanda paramite kona bhagyavana jeev Guru Krishna prasade pai bhakti lata bija. So it is, what is the cause of the living entity? Coming out of ignorance and attaining a life of bliss. Kona bhagyavan jeev. He becomes bhagyavan. He attains good fortune. Krishna... What is the fortune of the life? What is the wealth of the soul? Right? It's bhakti. Bhakti lata bij. And who is the dispenser of bhakti, and who selects? Is it a process of natural selection? The strongest and the fittest, they're the ones who get it? No. Actually, it's quite the opposite, isn't it? What is it? We were singing this morning. Prabhu was singing very beautifully. It was Patita Pavana Hetu Tava Avatar Mo Sama Patita Prabhu Na Paibeyar. Translation. Yeah. Okay, so he says, you are the savior of the fallen, and I'm the most fallen. So my claim is first. Yeah, so then one becomes recipient of good fortune when he realizes his position. Yes. When one realizes, no matter what I try to take shelter of, my good looks, my education, my skills, my degrees, my family, my aristocracy, my pride, my nation, my weapons, my this and my that. When one realizes that these things are not going to protect me from the onslaught of death, old age, and disease, then one can begin to seek the shelter of Mukunda, the only one who can give the nectar of life and reassurance of everlasting peace. That is fortune. That is actual fortune. All other forms of fortune, e manda e brahma e sabab, e manda e bala e sabab brahma. Not Brahma, but Brahma. This is another Chaitanya Charitamrita. Says, considering something to be good and bad in this world, it's actually just part of illusion, the activities of Maya. To consider something is high, something is low, something is good, something is abominable. So, fortune is required. And the Guru, the Vaishnava, the Brahmanas, they distribute that fortune through the society. So Krishna gives that agency to his pure devotee, and the devotee actually, Rupa Goswami is explaining that he can choose to whom he wants to give his mercy. Therefore, so much of our practice is centered around appealing to the mercy of Guru and Krishna. Bhakti is about attracting the mercy of the great souls. That's the sum and substance of our practice. We're not just trying to become great singers, great cooks, or very learned scholars. That's not really our purpose in all the things we do. We're actually just trying to qualify ourselves to attract the mercy of great souls. Your mercy is what I am made of, Narottam Das Thakur prays to his spiritual master. I am composed of your mercy. Yeah. And to be always like swimming in that consciousness. That is a bhakti life. So, that's a wonderful point here that Prabhupada is giving us. We'll continue. Every living entity is quitting his body under certain circumstances. He's living under certain circumstances and enjoying under certain circumstances under the spell of material nature. As a result, he is suffering different kinds of happiness and distress under the illusion of sense enjoyment. Persons who are everlastingly fooled by lust and desire lose all power of understanding their change of body and their stay in a particular body. They cannot comprehend it. Those who've developed spiritual knowledge, however, can see that the spirit is different from the body and is changing its body and enjoying in different ways. A person in such knowledge can understand how the conditioned living entity is suffering in this material existence. Therefore, those who are highly developed in Krishna consciousness try their best to give this knowledge to the people in general, for their conditional life is very much troublesome. They should come out of it and be Krishna conscious and liberate themselves to transfer to the spiritual world. So that's the meditation of a developed Krishna conscious devotee. He scans the world and says they should come out of it and be Krishna conscious and liberate themselves to transfer to the spiritual world. That reminds me of a verse from the 4th canto. Maybe someone can help remember. Kirata Pulinda, what is it? Abhira. So we don't have the Sanskrit, but it means that, all these different tribes and outcasts, and different types of communities which don't have Vedic culture, and says that if anyone from any of these communities around the world takes shelter of a pure Vaishnava guru, and then they can actually be exalted up to the platform of a pure devotee. This is possible because Lord Vishnu is the supreme power. Yeah, that's describing Srila Prabhupada. So that is the qualification of a guru. He can bring a person from whatever stage of life they're in and elevate them to the stage of devotional service. He's a very expert in this, actually. Just like, you meet someone who's expert in their craft, a carpenter or someone, He can take seemingly what seems like just a few ordinary ingredients and create something wonderful, right? I mean, I can't think of an exact example right now, but there's many such craftsmen out there, right? So in the same way, a spiritual master, you might say, this person is like totally in ignorance, look at this guy. But a spiritual master, if he decides to bestow his mercy, and if the person agrees to take shelter, if that connection is made, then he has all empowerment to lift that person up to the stage of pure devotion. One must have faith in this principle. That is what a guru can do. Asangahyayam purusha. The Shastra says that the soul is never actually contaminated per se by matter. Just like oil when it's dropped into water, it's never actually touched. It looks like it's there, but it's just covered. The covering can be removed. Okay. I wanted to go to the next verse also and continue here. Yatanto yoginas chainam pasyantyatmanyavastitham yatanto pyakritatmano nainam pashyanti chetasaha. Translation: the endeavoring transcendentalist who is situated in self-realization can see all this clearly. But those who are not situated in self-realization cannot see what is taking place, though they may try to. This is a very interesting verse. Prabhupada says in the purport, there are many transcendentalists in the path of spiritual self-realization. But one who is not situated in self-realization cannot see how things are changing in the body of the living entity. The word yoginaha is significant in this connection. In the present day, there are many so-called yogis, and there are many so-called associations of yogis, but they're actually blind in the matter of self-realization. They are simply addicted to some sort of gymnastic exercise. That's interesting. They are simply addicted to some sort of gymnastic exercise and are satisfied if the body is well built and healthy. They have no other information. They are called yatanto pyakrit atmanaha. Even though they are endeavoring in a so-called yoga system, they are not self-realized. Such people cannot understand the process of transmigration of the soul. Only those who are actually in the yoga system and have realized the self, the world, and the Supreme Lord, in other words, the bhakti yogis, those engaged in pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness, can understand how things are taking place. So this was a very interesting verse. It says, Yatanto yoginas chainam. So the endeavoring transcendentalist can see all this. By the way, he's situated in self-realization. But yatanto pyakrit atmano. Those who are not situated in self-realization cannot see what is taking place, though they may try to. So we're talking about, jnana and vijnana. How does jnana become vijnana? How does this knowledge, jnana chakshu, because Prabhupada spoke about in the previous verse, jnana chakshu, seeing with the eyes of knowledge, how does that become, our direct perception? So this is alluded to in the 5th chapter where Krishna says, Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmana Hastini. He says that the sages, by the virtue of their knowledge, they become humble. So Vidya and Vinaya give them the perception of the reality that there is the same quality of soul, of being within the heart of every type of entity. So knowledge, when it's combined with humility, it yields realization, true perception and understanding. But if knowledge is coupled with arrogance or pride, then in time it actually goes away. One loses that so-called knowledge. So this is a very important quality. This is, such an important part of the Bhagavad Gita, especially for this age we're in now, because reincarnation is a mystery to people all over the world. Many people accept it, but they might not be able to explain it or convince others. My uncle, my mother's brother, he's from Helsinki, Finland, and he still lives there. For many years he was a researcher. He was doing research on reincarnation, and I met him a few years ago when I was in Estonia. He came across the water on the boat. We met in Tallinn, And I said, "Uncle, I haven't seen you in like 20 years." And he said, "Well, what are you up to?" And he said, "You look like a monk now." I said, "Yeah, I'm doing that." He said, "That's amazing." I said, and it was ironic because he spent so many years trying to understand the nature of the self, but he ended up just living pretty much ordinary life. And he asked me about this. I said, "Well, I don't take it as just a theory. You know, I live according to that knowledge." And he said, "How can you be so sure?" And then he started speaking to me Advaita philosophy, and I understood that his knowledge never became clear. He couldn't see it clearly because he was influenced by Advaita philosophy, which Prabhupada explains impersonalism ultimately ends in sense gratification, which means bewilderment. It's interesting that also this knowledge of reincarnation, it was in many traditions, actually in the mystic sects of almost all the world's religions, there's a belief in reincarnation. Even in Christianity, they seem to be really dead set against the idea, because they have, their theory is resurrection. But one of the people who kind of inspires me in the old Christian tradition is, I don't know if I pronounce his name right, but he's one of the church fathers. His name is Origen. You've heard of him? Yeah, Prabhupada addresses some of this. So I actually found some quotes from Origen. I've been trying to collect some stuff about reincarnation just to present to students. Here's a quote. This is quite an amazing realization by Origen. He lived in the, 2nd century after Christ? 2nd and 3rd century. So he says, "If it can be shown that an incorporeal," means unembodied, "and reasonable being has life in itself independently of the body, and that it is worse off in the body than out of it, then beyond a doubt bodies are only of secondary importance, and arise from time to meet the varying conditions of reasonable creatures. Those who require bodies are clothed with them, and contrawise, when fallen souls have lifted themselves up to better things, their bodies are once more annihilated." I guess that's the subtle body he's speaking of also. Otherwise, because they are thus ever vanishing and ever reappearing. You never heard that from a Christian before, did you? That's pretty deep. Why he's not accepted? Well, that's like a whole political thing. He wasn't accepted as a saint by the Catholic tradition for certain reasons. Because if a person harms themselves, causes destruction or harm to their own body, they can't be accepted as a saint, if my information is correct. And then he said, it was said that about him, he in order to practice celibacy, he castrated himself at a young age so that he could continue with that. And that was considered a little extreme or fanatical. So he wasn't. But later, I think in the 20th century, again his teachings were rediscovered, and the Pope encouraged further investigation of his views. Jai Shishi Gaur Nitai. And I'll just read one more, let me see if I find it. One more quote. Origen, oh yeah. So, this is paraphrasing Origen. "So convincing is this Platonic faith to him that he cannot restrain his impatience at the crude belief of traditionalists about the last day and resurrection of the dead. How can material bodies be recompounded?" Origen asked, "every particle of which has passed into many other bodies. To which body do these molecules belong? So," he says scornfully, "men fall into the lowest depths of absurdity, and they take refuge in the pious assurance that everything is possible with God." He said, by some inclination toward evil, certain spirit souls come into bodies, first of men, then due to their association with the irrational passions after the allotted span of human life, they are changed into beasts, from which they sink to the level of plants. From this condition they rise again through the same stages and are restored to their heavenly place. So pretty insightful. So, but this knowledge, it's being stressed here that this knowledge of how the soul is existing in different bodies, it's perceived by one who is trained. One whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. So, anyone of any particular tradition or faith, they get training from the previous masters. Because people like Origen and others who had beliefs in reincarnation were rejected systematically, then that couldn't be carried forward. So training is such an important aspect of how we see the world. And even in biology, previously it was thought that the smallest cells of the body were simply like mobile globules, like amorphous little globules of some plasma, right? But later, with the advent of microbiology and cellular biology, then people began to discover that within a single human cell, there are so many synchronized and coordinated events happening at every moment. It's more complex than the city of Kansas City, if you analyze it, how things are being constructed and moved about throughout the cell. It's so exacting. So, if you give a student in a laboratory some microscope and ask him to observe the cell, at first thought, without hearing and being trained, he might just have that assumption of the earlier, scientists, thinking it's just some plasmic globules. But then when you hear from one whose eyes are trained already, he gives you that ability to perceive things that you, on your own strength, would not have seen. Then you look and you begin to experiment and see it from different angles, and you begin to understand how the cell is working. And you appreciate it, right? So another example Prabhupada gives, you were speaking about this to me, Rishikumar, the other day, is that of a mechanic. So when you open the hood of a car and you look in the engine, for most of us it's just, conglomeration of pipes and things, and I don't even have words for it. I just look at it, it looks like a mess to me. But when the mechanic opens it, he says, I see what's wrong, and he give me this part, that part, he moves this, he can know without seeing, he knows how the parts are connected underneath and on that side, and then he can make an adjustment. So just to see an engine requires so much training. What to speak of to understand the subtle creation of the Supreme Absolute Truth and how souls are existing within matter. How much training is required? Prabhupada said in the previous purport, this requires a great amount of knowledge, understood from Bhagavad Gita and similar literatures, heard from a bona fide spiritual master. Yes. It was not cheap. I'm going to read you a little verse that's really inspiring for me, from the Mukundamala Stotra, about how, you have something you'd like to say? Sure. Go ahead.
On the idea of reincarnation, I've been playing with the idea or conceptualizing the idea that maybe the soul, like when it leaves this body, it goes back to the infinite energy source, Krishna. And that energy, I wonder, is it exactly recycled as it is? Is that soul, is it boxed and squared away and then put into, here's another body for it? Or is that energy now part of the whole, and this little creature here now gets the energy of life, right? Gets a soul. Could it be a collection of all of the energies that exist ever, the whole? Or is, did my soul transfer in this compartmentalized state all the way over to this little beetle that is just living its life?
There's important, So Bhagavad Gita is considered like the manual of understanding the nature of the soul, consciousness, material energy, spiritual energy, God. It's considered like the what do you call it? The decoder. When you read Bhagavad Gita, then you can look at all the aspects of life and see how everything is working. So in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna establishes unchanging knowledge about the soul. And he says a very important quality of spirit is that it's not cleavable. You don't have, it's not possible to have a mass of spirit and then some piece of that is coming out and then returning to it later. Like, it's not, spirit is unchangeable. So if there is a particle of spirit, it always was a particle and it always will be a particle, it will never be the whole. Does it make sense? Just like if you have the sun, not if you have, we see every day the sun. The sun is there and it is emanating particles of light energy, photons. And those particles are simultaneously one with the sun because they can't exist independent of the sun. As soon as the sun is cut out, those particles, they lose, or if a spark is taken away from a fire, it loses its illuminating quality. But in connection with the fire, or the sun rays in connection with the sun, it has its full, it's displaying its full potential. So, but those particles or those rays, they never become one with the sun. They're always part of the sun. So the soul, the individual souls that we see all around us, you, me, everyone here, the animals, the plants, all the human beings, they're all part and parcel eternally of God. It means they always have been small individual beings, and they always will be that way. It will never change. So when a soul, the difference between a liberated soul and a soul who is in bondage, in the cycle of birth and death, is that the liberated soul has no more attachment to subtle and gross bodies. As we heard from Origin, it's like what did he say? It's just a covering. It's like a cloak that the soul is wearing. But when you remove that covering, that real individual nature and form of the soul again manifests. And so just like a fish on the land, it can only flop around, not very gracefully. But when you put it back into the water, it swims very freely. So we are souls in material existence struggling. But when the soul is back into that, what you mentioned, the spiritual world, the spiritual energy, then he's still individual, but now he's free. He's liberated. He can move and live freely. Does it make sense? Okay. Would anyone like to say anything about that? Yes? No, I'm open now. Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Sorry?
Can I be heard?
What's going on?
Can anyone hear me? I don't think they're hearing. Hare Krishna.
Alright, now we can hear.
Hare Krishna. Didn't mean to break up the discussion. Anyone here?
Yes, we can hear you now.
I can speak now? You can hear me? Okay, thanks. Sorry for the disturbance. I just wanted to make a point. And please forgive me if I'm not understandable. But Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that There are two types of energy. One is called apara, prakriti, and that's matter. And that's made of 8 different types. Bhumir, apo, nalo, vayu, kam manobhir evacha, ankara itiyame, binna prakritira ashtata. 8 types: earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. These 8 comprise living entities. Excuse me. These 8 don't comprise living entities. These comprise matter. So that's apara prakriti, means it's inferior energy. And he has another energy, which he calls para, superior energy. And that is the living entities. They're called the jivas. So the spirit souls, the living entities, are eternally spirit souls. They never become matter, they never die. And they're never born. And matter never becomes spirit. It's always going to be matter. It's inferior. But that's all right, because when the inferior energy is engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord by the mercy of Krishna and his devotees, then that matter also gets a wonderful opportunity to be spiritualized. And the living entities, as you nicely pointed out, are never actually covered by matter. They don't mix in with matter. They always remain loop. And then they can be reinstated in their transcendental position in the spiritual world with Krishna. Thank you very much.
Yes, Prabhu. Krishna Shavana Prabhu, would you like to add anything?
Tvevahum natu nasam natam neme jadadipa nataiva nabhavishyama sarvavyam tapadam. On the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Krishna told Arjuna that never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. So in this way, Krishna affirms that the soul is never born and it never dies. It's eternally the same. And it's always an individual, it never merges.
Thank you so much. Prabhuji. Krishnendu Prabhu.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a question since the topic came up to further discuss the topic. So if the soul is individual, like you say, according to the Bhagavad Gita, and they don't merge, and this body is just like a cloak or a cloth, so what happens when one gives up the cloth? What happens? You say there's the spiritual form, but what is that? You know, what's your form, what's my form? How do we know these things?
What I had in mind was the second canto verse, Mukti arhitvan yata rupam svarupena vyavastitaha. That when one gives up, when one is freed from the bondage of the gross and subtle bodies both, then Swarupena Vyavastiti, he is reinstated in his original form, his original spiritual form. And your question is, what is that form? In general, the answer is, who knows what I'm going to say? Jivera Swarupa Hoy, Krishnera Nityadas. So it's a servant of Krishna. Now, exactly, each form has just like we have specific details of our personality and form right now, materially. So in the spiritual world, each individual has specific details of his identity. And the general thing is the service. All of his desires are geared towards, service of Krishna. In this material world, our desires are geared towards service of the senses, and therefore we get fitting form, type of nose, eyes, ears, arms, everything, to satisfy that desire. And that picture we were looking at yesterday, it's the reflection of the spiritual world into the material side is on the basis of desire. So when the desire is to give transcendental love to Krishna, then the form becomes Krishna Das. And then, if one is in Vaikuntha, he may have a four-armed form, similar to the Lord's. Or if he goes to the highest planet in the spiritual sky, Goloka Vrindavan, he may have a form that is in any of the 5 primary rasas and has accordingly certain age, type of service, certain type of dress, and other features. There's 11 features that the acharyas like Bhaktivinoda Thakur discuss that are revealed, that one can actually realize at the higher stages of devotional service. But that's confidential. And first one has to prove his loyalty and surrender to the Guru and to Krishna, who then allow him entrance into more confidential spiritual matters. So, but we can rest assured and have faith on the basis of Shastras, Acharyas, our Gurus, that we do have an eternal form of bliss and knowledge that will be revealed in due course. Okay, well, that's our time. So thank you very much for your attention, Prabhus and Matas and everyone online. Vancha kalpatarubhasya kripasindhyavacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Danavir Maharaj ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita Eternal Nectar ki jai.